All right, what is going on, everybody? I am joined with a special guest today. I previewed this the last week, gave you a little sneak peek, but I'm happy to announce we have Stephanie, aka Miss Money Moves, here on the podcast with us. Stephanie, how are you today? Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. You have such great guests and always talk about all things finance, and I just love it. So excited to be a part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, I try, right? And I think I see you trying out there too. I think some people say like the personal finance market is a little saturated, but I really disagree because I think everybody has like a different take and a different like voice too, right? Like a different method of pitching their ideas and such.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I think that within the overall personal finance world, you find different little, niches where your community thinks this way about budgeting or about real estate so it's nice to find different people that think similarly to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the world it can be like similar but still a little different, right? Like disagreeing on
Yeah.
certain things but agreeing on others, things like that. What got you into personal finance? Tell us a little bit about yourself and I guess your project Miss Money Moves.
Yeah, I got into it a couple of years ago. I had gotten into real estate, and so I was making more money than I'd ever made, and my bills had stayed the same, and yet I was still living paycheck to paycheck. And I was like, I don't understand how that's happening every
Yeah.
month. Like I should be fine. I'm making more money. So then I just kind of dove into learning about budgeting, which took me down so many rabbit holes. Retirement accounts, investing. Even I was in real estate, but it took me down even more information about real estate than I could have imagined. So yeah, that's kind of what started the journey. And then I just really needed like an outlet and wanted to be able to have a space where I was only following finance accounts so that I could get on social media and it would just be kind of educational rather than just social.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of taken so many turns since I started it almost 2 years ago, but we're kind of growing it into a virtual assistant business now and just still trying to learn as much as I can about personal finance and provide free resources for other people to learn as well. So
Awesome, awesome. So you were what did you find when you were like when you looked into budgeting? Was it that you were just spending more on like eating out or like entertainment or because you said your bills stayed the same, you're making more money. What was like the aha moment that you caught yourself on?
so I started a budget, just like a basic spreadsheet budget, all those ones you see people, give free templates about.
Yeah.
And I did it for like 3 months where I was like, okay, I'm just going to look at it and like try not to judge and just kind of see where we're at. And I was spending an absurd amount of money on just going out and getting food and drinks, like $400 or $500 a month. Like I was like, wow, okay, I am living my best life, but I also have no money. So, and I mean, like, I like to cook too. So I was like,
Uh-huh.
I'm grocery shopping on top of going out and spending all this money. So it's like way too much money on food is really what I discovered.
Yeah, I feel that. That's like my vice too, right? Like I like shopping, but like I'm not spending thousands of dollars on shopping a year. Maybe I'll get like a new shirt every month or a new pair of shoes, but that stuff doesn't really add up as much as people realize eating out does, especially now when it's so like for two people, if you can eat out for less than like $60, that's like a steal. And it's pretty rare.
It is. And I think too, like I mean, you probably relate to this. For me, it's like that's kind of my social thing. Like
Yeah.
if I have a friend in town or if someone, is like, hey, I haven't seen you, let's get together. I'm like, oh, let's go to dinner, and which just adds up. So I think finding other ways to be social with people, finding some free things you could do, or even just I started being like, hey, I'll meet you a little bit later and we can just have like a drink and I'll still eat dinner at home. So I could still
Nice.
be social without having to spend all the money.
That's smart. Yeah. I have a buddy coming in town next month and without even realizing it, I'm like, oh, it'll be for your birthday. We're gonna go to the best restaurant in town. You tell me what type of food you want and I'll book the best restaurant. It's like that's already before it's even happened, that's gonna be an expensive weekend.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I mean any other like when you think about your personal life, are there any other like vices that you think are like maybe like I don't even want to say a weakness because I think everybody has to balance oh my saving versus like living your current life and enjoying that. Any other like guilty pleasures that you have financially?
I mean, I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I'm not really a big shopper or anything like that. So it was really just the eating out that was the biggest one.
Yeah.
And then of course, like we all have, I started my personal finance journey at like 20, 26, 27. So
Okay.
there was some, I leased a car at 23. And once I realized kind of how that actually looked with the numbers, I was like, oh, it probably wasn't my best idea, but you
Yeah.
live and you learn. So a few things like that. But for the most part, I didn't have too much. I mean, I was lucky to not have any like student loan debt, which I know is a big thing that a lot of people
Yeah.
carry with them. So I was lucky in that regard. But
Same here, right? I think the car, I still talk about that as being like my biggest financial mistake. I finally paid that off last year, but I think a lot of people don't even think about it because you need a car, right? It's just like I think if there's like a really good like someone could probably create a whole account, a whole like community on buying cars better and smarter. And getting it to people that are like 18, because like by the time
yeah,
you're our age or by the time you're 25, 26, you've either done made the mistake already, or you're like right in the thick of it, and it's kind of hard to put things away and think about like a purchase of a car in a smart manner when you need it in a month or two as well.
and and I always say that like pretty much every aspect of life is kind of like a sales job when you really look at it. But car salesmen are very unique salesmen, so you have to keep an eye out on that. I mean, they are good at their job, is what they are. And sometimes when you're young and you don't know anything else, you just trust them. And I don't think all of them are the most trustworthy.
Yeah, there's so much leverage that they have too, right? Like a trick that I fell into and I see a lot is they'll be like, what's your goal for a monthly payment? And then they can make a $30,000 car and a $60,000 car fit into a $400 or $500 budget, but you don't realize you're signing on for like 5 more years. Or the interest rate. My first car, the interest rate was 7.7%. And it's because I did the financing at the dealership, and then they keep you there for so long too. There are so many little tricks and hacks that just wear people down. Um,
Yes.
I think it's one of the worst shopping experiences people can probably go through, which is maybe also in turn why people get screwed in terms of rates or costs or whatever so often, because you can't even like
Yeah.
do the due diligence because you're just exhausted. I don't know.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. I have, even before I learned everything about personal finance and kind of learned about my car mistakes, I have always hated everything cars. They're just, everything about them's hard, but you have to have one. So
It's true for most places, right?
yes,
Yeah, so I mean, listeners, you can go check out Stephanie here at Miss underscore money underscore moves, right? For your
yes, yep,
Instagram.
yeah.
Are
And
you
I'm
any
on there, and I'm trying to be on TikTok. TikTok's weird though, but mostly Instagram is the best place to find me. And I just try to share as much as I can to help other people learn. I'm also in real estate, so I do love to talk about real estate on there. I think that's kind of how we connected too, a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, every social media. So you are on TikTok also?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Every social media platform is different, and it's funny how like the content that you do for one, like you can just start mastering like reels and posting on stories on Instagram, and you're like, okay, that's something totally different than what people want to see on TikTok.
Yeah, really, it truly is.
It's a full-time game right there. I don't think people realize. You have a bunch of free resources on your page, which I love though. I saw the debt payoff calculator. Any other resources that you had that like are going to be helpful for people to check out?
I do have a free financial planner, which is just kind of a more in-depth like budgeting tool. It's
Okay.
just a Google Doc like spreadsheet that I had put together and used at the beginning of my journey. I'm a big spreadsheet person. I'm a little obsessed with them. So I mean, if you're a spreadsheet person, it's free. It totally works for you. But I know some people hate that. So there's tons of budgeting apps out there that are free also. But I would just, that's like first step. Just learn your numbers and kind of figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, you can't make any changes until you know what you're spending money on and what you're making each month.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Excel wise? Are you pretty good? You have all the shortcuts down and everything?
I don't. I wish I was better at it. I just love, like, I've downloaded other people's like Excel and Google Docs templates, and a spreadsheet just makes everything feel so like clean and
Mhm.
organized that it's like, it speaks to my OCD. So that's
Yeah.
like what I love about them. I wish I was better with it, but maybe one day we'll work on it.
I wish I was better with Excel too. Like I don't know. I see a lot of jokes online. They're like, "Oh, when you realize that people are using their mouse in Excel, and I'm like, what, what's the alternative?
You can do that? What?
Right. Like I'm like, oh wow, these people must be real good that they're not even getting off of their keyboard. That's goals right there. Because then I
Yeah.
would spend more time in Excel and just be
Mhm.
more comfortable with it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were like, was you were always working in real estate, or did you have any experience before that, before you kind of started diving into real estate specifically?
Yeah, I mean, so I went to college for business. I worked in like hospitality and the events industry, which I really, really liked. But then I just realized you get really tied to like being somewhere 40 hours a week. You know, I was in a event sales job, so it was like a desk job. I was stuck there and I was calling my mom like every day. Like I can't keep doing this. I can't keep sitting in an office all day. Like I've been here 3 months and I'm supposed to be here for years. Like I can't do this my whole life. And she was in real estate and had been in real estate, and she would just explain to me how flexible her life was, you know, how if she wanted to take time off to come visit me, she could. And,
Nice.
you know, she was busy, but she wasn't stuck in one place. She got to drive around, she got to see houses. So I talked to her quite a bit, and then I decided to go to real estate school. That was about 4.5 years ago,
Okay.
out in Arizona. And I will say, everybody's always like, oh, I'm thinking about getting my license. I was thinking about it. My one disclaimer: school is the hardest part of it. And it sucks and it's hard, but it's so worth it. So if you're thinking about it, I definitely say do it, but just be prepared that it's a weird school and it's kind of hard. Um, and then,
What
yeah, I got into it. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what's hard about the real estate school? Is it like just learning so much legal information, or
Yeah, it's like a lot of like legal information and like specific terminology. And so it's kind of like I always tell people, and then like the way they word questions on the test is very much like those long-winded math problems you used to have, where it was like, if this train leaves at this time, at this, it's like, and that's how the whole
oh
test
wow,
feels. So it's just
yeah,
like, it's just a lot. And it's, I mean, for some people, it's probably easy and they're probably like, passed it, no problem. For me, I did not have that experience. So, um, yeah, so it's just kind of a weird test and whatnot. And it's a lot of legal stuff and a lot of terminologies.
gotcha. Did you study for quite a bit then?
Yeah, I think it took me about 5 or 6 months to
Okay.
get through it because you have to do actually like in Arizona, it's 90 hours of schooling that you have to go through.
Okay.
Each state's a little bit different with how many hours. And at the time, Arizona, you had to do it in person. This was like before COVID and everything. So you had to do the 90 hours in person. So I was
Mhm.
like working full time and then like going to school on top of that, which just made it take me a little bit longer. Um, and then, yeah, and then you have to pass all the tests and whatnot.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've heard that they're state by state. It can range a lot on like how hard the test is, actually. But you got into a good market right there in Arizona over the last 4 years or so. I know everybody's been having hella equity in their house gain
Yeah.
just from the
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah,
appreciation.
so when I first got into it, it was, I mean, I will say I was pretty new. I didn't know a ton about what was going on. I think it was like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And I was like in a traditional brokerage, you
Okay.
know, where you don't make money unless you sell a house. And
Uh-huh.
so I didn't know a ton of people. I was newer to Arizona and I wasn't selling houses right off the bat. I had a lot to learn.
Okay.
So then I got back into hospitality to pay the bills for a while because real estate wasn't paying it full time. And then, I mean, COVID was crazy, but it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it kind of pushed me to get back into real estate again. And I kind of found a better fit for me and was actually making money and learning a lot more with the company I signed up with. So it ended up being, I think a lot of people have their COVID story where they're like, blessing in disguise. It took me
Yeah.
from this thing into this new thing. So I definitely feel that, which was nice.
Yeah, I think it's funny that like it was just a large event, right? That made everybody question everything. Am I happy doing
Mm-hmm.
this? Can I do this type of career during like bad economic times? So that was like a wake up call that made people kind of evaluate what's going on in their life. And then with that time to evaluate, right, you can actually make changes, which I think most people don't just stop and look around and be like, am I in a good role? Am I going to appreciate what I'm doing 2, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, even? And then what's like the growth like?
Yeah, no, definitely. And then, I mean, and then I went through the process in 2020. So I guess it was like summer 2020. So we were kind of into COVID, but the real estate market hadn't gotten super crazy just yet. It was like right before that chaos hit.
Mhm.
And I ended up buying my first condo, which even though I had been a real estate agent for a few years, the
Yeah.
process of actually going through and buying my own and like seeing every step of it from like the loan to all the way through close and everything that you do and being the one doing it, that was an eye opener. I learned a lot from that experience.
Yeah, it's an exhausting process. There is a lot of T's to cross and a lot of I's to dot. How was that experience for you? Was it stressful? Did you go through it on your own? Like, tell us more about that home buyer journey for you at first.
Yeah, I mean, I think my mom had finally moved here at that point, so I had her in town, and she's, like I said, she's kind of my influence in real estate.
Mhm.
So I had her at every step of the way to ask questions too. But overall, it went pretty good. I mean, the loan process was pretty stressful, just for the sole fact that we were in the middle of COVID, and so I had like some weird stuff going on at my W-2 job at the time, and I
Mhm.
was like, when you're in the middle of the loan for that like 30 45 days, like nothing can change
Right.
financially. It's like, don't go buy anything. Don't, you know, nothing can change at work. You can't leave your job. So it was during that time that my job in events was like really transitioning. And they were like, hey, like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to be furloughed? Do you want this up? And I was like, I need things to stay exactly the
Yeah.
same for like 3 more weeks. And so that part was stressful, but on the lender side, the lender was great. And, they talked me through all the numbers. I was able to get a first time home buying program. So that helped with like
Nice.
down payment assistance, which I think a lot of people don't even know that's an option. So every time I talk to people, I'm like, oh, is this your first time? I'm like, yeah. Has anybody talked to you about this option? Like, talk to lenders, find someone that can give you those opportunities. You might as well use them while you have them.
Absolutely. So when you say first time home buyers program, is that like an FHA loan or is because each state kind of has their own thing? Was that in addition to like a typical FHA loan? How did that work?
Yeah, it was in addition to the loan. It was kind of like a separate program that just with your being the first time buying, you can get some down payment assistance,
Okay.
to encourage people to buy for the first time. It helps you out. I think it ended up lowering like what I had to pay at close and for a down payment by like I think $2,000 or so. So that was really nice. I mean, that's a good chunk of change to save, especially when you're moving into your first place.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes when people go through the real estate purchase process or think about purchasing real estate is the closing costs. They'll think about like I need a 10% down payment, 20% down payment, and they'll get so hung up on that causes like analysis paralysis where they don't move past that. So knowing that they can get some assistance is awesome there, but then also they're like they're overestimating maybe sometimes the work or how much they need, but then underestimating some of the additional costs that go separate from the actual down payment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think, oh, I need a down payment and it has to be 20%. And it's like, okay, that's way high. It doesn't need to be 20%. You could find a primary residence for around 5%, maybe even a little bit less if you're, find the right lender. But then also maybe keep that 20% in mind because sometimes once you get to closing costs, you will need a little bit more money. So it's lots of numbers and lots of things, but that's why I think the most important part is just finding a team, finding a lender that you connect with and you work with and you're not afraid to ask them questions, finding a realtor that can communicate well with you and like fits what you need. So again, that you're not afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, I think I mean the goal the realtor's job kind of in my opinion is to walk you through not only just looking at houses but what it takes to buy that home. And sometimes that's why I think every realtor I've ever talked with, they always have their own roster of lenders and appraisal specialists, all these people that you're like overwhelmed with how many things you have to do, and the realtor's like, no, I got two options for you here, they're great. Maybe for you, this one's a better option. Here's three options on lenders. Go reach out to them and kind of see what they can do for you individually. I think that's the role of like the networker or the connector, the middleman, is one of the biggest roles throughout the whole process that the realtor can play.
Oh yeah, definitely. I've met with people recently where, I'm like, hey, like, are you working with anybody? And they're like, oh yeah, but like haven't heard from them in like a week and a half. And I'm like, you're actively looking for a home and your realtor's not communicating with you. Like
Yeah.
that's a pretty big red flag. Like they should be obviously no one's available every second that you need them, but you should be able to get in touch with them and ask them the questions that you have, and they should be putting your mind at ease and helping you through every step of the process.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a stressful process because you have your day job, you have whatever else you're doing in life, and then there's a whole task list thrown at you. Pretty much every week, there's more things to do. Whether you're in the early stage looking at homes, and you have to decide what homes to go see that weekend. You have to go make some time for it, or once you're further along the process, I feel like every single day there was like, check these 3 boxes off. Oh, cool, we got that paperwork, but we need to go and edit it. And then you're trying to keep track of all the changes and everything. So you really have to be on the ball, and a realtor that's not responsive, like you said, like that to me is a huge red flag, because they're going to make money off of it at the end of the day. They should want you to feel comfortable and then be educated throughout the process too.
Yeah. And like you said, all those things that you have to check out, some of them are like time sensitive. It's like, hey, I sent this to you and I actually need it back like within 24 hours so that we
Yeah.
can get everything done in time. So, I mean, you were saying you recently bought a home. How was your experience with that?
Yeah, I think the process for me was a little different just because I'd kind of gone through the process before with a partner. So I did a house flip back in 2019 with a partner. And because I had that partner, I was able to kind of like sit and see a lot of it without having to be on the hook for everything myself. So we were able to kind of divide and conquer, which was really nice. And we bought the house in Florida. I was in Colorado. They were actually in Florida. So a lot of the in-person things they were able to take off my plate there. Whereas when it came to like, oh, call this person, anything you could do remotely, that's what I would do. And like, oh, like let's negotiate these rates and stuff. Those are things that not only I could do easily or remotely, but I felt a little more comfortable doing, because I'm in sales, and those are contract negotiation things isn't something that everybody's comfortable even talking about. So that was kind of more within my wheelhouse versus him being there in person. So going through it this time alone, and then also knowing that I was going to be living in the house versus just not renting it out to someone, the concern was like a lot different, right? Like I'm like, oh, am I actually going to want to live in this area? So I was a little pickier, even though I was still looking at it for like an investment purpose. I knew I was going to have to live there for at least a year, maybe two. And so I was a little pickier, and then it goes into the game of emotion versus like logistics and finding that middle ground. So that was a pretty stressful part for me, because if you're just looking at it as numbers, or if you're just looking at it as like oh, I'm buying a house in Cleveland, like I'm never going to live in Cleveland, that's easier because I can just look at the numbers and be like, objectively they don't work out, I'm out, right? But like as soon as you get your emotion involved, you're a little more tied to the home, and that to me that amplifies the stress a little bit throughout the whole process. But my realtor was really good. She helped me again kind of navigate everything and make all the connections. And I needed a contractor. She helped me make the connection with the contractor as well. The rate situation this year was really frustrating for me, because when I first started looking, I think rates were like 4%. They were sub 5. And by the time like I was actually ready to make the purchase a month and a half later, like I moved pretty quickly in my opinion, but they had jacked up to like 5.5 to 6. And then so now I'm looking at so many other options, like a potential ARM, like an adjusted rate mortgage, where maybe it's going to be a low rate for a couple years, but then if mortgage rates are not lower in a couple years, then that's super risky too. So looking at it from a very different perspective, knowing that I was going to live in it, and then also just the economic times, it was very, very different, and like I couldn't have prepared for that. Really,
Yeah.
it was crazy there.
Yeah. A big thing that, I've heard people say throughout the last like kind of 6 to 8 months with all the rates and the chaos there. And it kind of gave me peace of mind. It was like, well, even if you get in at a higher rate, at least you're getting it potentially at a lower price because you're kind of in a buyer's market and you have a little bit more room for negotiation. And then down the road, a couple of years from now, if the rates do drop, you could always refinance and get a lower rate. So like you are locked in, but you do have options. You're not, so just remembering that there are those other options out there. I was like, okay, we don't need to, like, yes, rates going up is stressful, but we don't need to completely freak out. It will most likely be okay. I mean, it's like when you look at the stock market, like when in doubt, zoom out, like it'll probably be okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That was kind of my thinking too. Like if I can afford it now when rates are not even at historical highs, but like I guess highs for our lifetime.
Yeah, yeah.
So I can hopefully weather this storm, and then in a year or two, maybe things get better. Ironically, my mortgage lender from I guess yeah, it's last year now already, from July, just reached out to me today or yesterday saying that he's moving to a different firm and they can already offer a lower rate. It was
There we
like
go.
0.6 lower. So I'm not sure if that always makes sense, because for 0.6%, I don't know if there's like a loan origination fee or anything like that, but definitely worth looking into. And I'm not complaining there, because rates have lowered a little bit over the past few months, but
Yeah.
yeah.
That's another thing too. Like as a real estate agent, like I feel like I probably understand lending a little bit better than like the average person that's just
Yeah.
out there. But lending it's its whole own industry. It's a huge thing. There are things that I don't even know about it. You know, there's aspects of it that I still don't fully understand. So having, like I said, a good real estate agent, but also a good lender too is so important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So do you think that you bought at like a peak in the market? Was it a tough competition to look for homes and get homes when you were looking? Because this was
So
2020.
yeah, this was July of 2020, and
Okay.
I think I bought. I mean, obviously, you're always going to hear people say, "Should have bought 2 years ago." Like, yeah, I should have bought in 2018, but I wasn't even thinking of it then. So I
Hindsight.
will say that overall, I definitely lucked out. I think I bought right before it got crazy, and it was in the summertime, which Arizona, the summertime is always just kind of an off season. So I think
Oh,
that
okay.
helped me have a little bit less competition because it's 100 degrees outside and not many
Yeah.
people are wanting to go out and look at homes. So I think I ended up buying at a pretty decent time. Um, it worked out well. I did have to offer a little bit over because there was another offer, but it wasn't 30, 40,000 over like you heard
Yeah.
going on throughout
I've
2020,
heard of
the
up to
end
a
of 2020.
triple.
And yeah, it
Right.
got very competitive. So, and then I mean, now with where the prices have gone, I have a decent amount of equity in the home, which is
Okay.
nice. And,
Nice.
we're hoping to buy an investment. We kind of started opposite of you. We did our personal purchase as our first one and then hoping to do an investment.
Mhm.
We wanted to do it last year, but then just with rates and everything that was going on,
Right.
and I was like, you know what, we're not in a rush, so we might as well just wait and kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, when it comes to real estate, I hate people who are like in a rush, because you're most likely rushing based on factors that are just like artificially created. Oh, like my friends are all buying, so I feel like I need to buy. That's not a real thing. Or like, I mean, it's a real thing in terms of feeling, but that's not an actual reason that you need to rush and buy a home. If you were to move for work across the country and feel like you need to move into a new house right away, to me, you could still rent for a year in that city and check the city out, understand what areas you want to live in versus not live in. I think almost anytime there's like a rush to buy a home, um, unless you've seen your dream home, most of the time, like stacking cash is not going to work against you, because you're just going to be in a hopefully better position, depending on market factors and such.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I always thought that the first time you buy a house, the first time my parents bought it was like a full on house, like 4 bedrooms, two
Yeah,
baths, backyard, like house. And I remember being 24 and being like, there's no way I can afford a house price right now. And so then when I started looking at it, like, oh, if I can get a condo though and live there for a few years, I'd be living in probably an apartment anyway, so it's about the same size, and then I can rent it out down the road as an investment. So
yeah,
that was a big mindset shift. But the societal pressures that you feel them and they're real.
yeah.
But if you can kind of learn to block that out and focus on what works for your specific situation and your finances and what you're doing, you'll probably be better off in the long run.
Yeah, how's the experience been in the condo so far? Because I don't think people like, I think when we first talked to you, like people don't talk about condos that much, or you didn't even know you could rent them out. So I mean, how has that experience been for you?
It's been good. I mean, I think it was nice to, as like a first time homeowner, to be in a condo because
Yeah,
you don't have yard maintenance, so you're not worrying about anything kind of externally going wrong.
nice.
And then anything internally is so much smaller. Like my water heater is smaller because I have a 925 square foot condo. So if it does
Yeah,
go out, it's more like 200-300 bucks instead of closer to 1,000, where the bigger water heater would be. So it almost feels like a baby step, like a good learning
Yeah.
experience to kind of see what homeownership's like and see the things you have to be responsible for. There are things that I wish I would have looked into before I bought. I didn't really realize that certain condominiums and townhome complexes, their HOAs will have rental restrictions. So
Okay.
some of them don't allow short-term rentals. Some of them, have 6-month requirements. Some of them have a year requirement. So mine has, I think it's a 6-month requirement on mine. So I wouldn't be able to like Airbnb it,
Yeah.
which when I was buying, I just wasn't even real. I was thinking, oh, eventually it'll be a long-term rental.
Yeah.
Then it's in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the Airbnb market shot through the roof. And I was like, oh, that would have been phenomenal to be able to do right now. But I
Yeah.
have that HOA restriction. So just paying more attention to kind of what your HOA rules and regulations are in a condominium, especially if you're going to own. And like for me, I want to own it long term because I want it to be a rental. So I think diving into that would have been a little bit more helpful, but
Yeah.
still not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Some HOAs can be crazy, some are super lax and barely there and just take care of like lawn maintenance. I think they range a lot. Looking back on it, were you able to do like you're saying you wish you could have, but was it even available to like look into the HOA before purchasing the home? Because I'm wondering if that information is even kind of like publicly available for a condominium.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like publicly available, but when you're going through the purchase process, you can have your realtor request a copy of like the CCNRs, which are all
Okay.
the rules and regulations. So you can get a copy of that. It's also like, I mean, none of us millennials read the terms and agreements for anything. So then you get this stack of paperwork and you're like, and it's actually like physical papers.
Yeah.
So you're like, how much of this am I gonna read? So I mean, when I was looking at it, I skimmed through it. I did look at what was most important to me, which was the pets thing, because I had a dog and I know sometimes they have rules about that. And it said that there was like a 30-pound dog limit or something like that. But then I saw other neighbors that had, bigger dogs. So I was like, okay, obviously they're not super strict on that. So I did look at what I was paying attention to. I just wish I would have paid attention to a few more things when I was skimming through that paperwork.
That makes sense. Like you said, there's a lot of paperwork that's separate just for the HOA, right? And then
Yeah.
you still got all the paperwork of just going through the home buyer process. I definitely skimmed. I've heard of people hiring lawyers to go through the process and like read it all with them. I think that might be a bit of overkill. I think it's maybe better just to read through it as thoroughly as you possibly can. And then if you have questions, maybe you ask your realtor, right? And they can help with that. But yeah, that was an overwhelming process for sure. And I really do, but I'm with you there where I'm like most people our age are not reading through all of that, if any of it.
Yeah, definitely. It can just be a lot and you can get lost in all of it. So, but I would think kind of like you were saying when you're trying to figure out like what your priorities were when you were buying your house.
Mhm.
If you're buying a condo, I would just think like, okay, what are you thinking long term? Do you want it to be an Airbnb? Do you want it to be a
Yeah.
rental? Do you have pets? Like, see what also like my HOA pays for my water. So like knowing that they include the water bill in the HOA payment, like just seeing what all's included. I think that's probably the biggest advice I'd have if people were looking at condos or townhomes is just paying attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a nice little perk right there. I was gonna ask if something goes out with the water heater, that's like all on you? Do you have to go source the people who work on that, or does the HOA have contracts with maintenance people to come in and do it with you? I'm curious about how much like help they can really offer there.
Yeah, so I mean, each HOA is going to be a little bit different because it's like a management company. So each management company is going to have their own style, and then like my HOA includes water, some don't.
Okay.
So it includes the water. So like it's weird, but like if you were to look into the like open my walls up, some of the pipes in the walls are going to be marked like HOA pipes, and some are marked just for your unit. So it
Okay.
depends on the pipe. Like I had a water leak in my bathroom, and it was leaking into the downstairs neighbors, and so we had to like figure out, go in, look at the pipes, figure out if it was an HOA pipe or if it was our pipe. Unfortunately, it was ours, so we had to split the cost. Um, and then like
That's
the water heater would be mine, but then like exterior, so like if the paint on the outside of the house, that's all HOA stuff. But then anything inside your unit is yours to manage and handle. But then like also they pay the water bill. I've had like issues with water pressure before. And so then I have to
Ooh,
reach out to them because they're the
okay.
people managing the water as a whole. So it can be a weird like back and forth. I had a
Mhm.
pretty average HOA company the first 2 years. We've just switched this last year and they've been a handful. So we're working on it. I'm hoping it gets better.
Okay. Yeah, that changeover process has got to be a little frustrating, right? Because you bought the house or the condo with one company in mind, and then
Mhm.
that switches, and then the company might come in and make changes. It's just like working a job, right? Like if you sign up for one leadership team, and then that switches, that can push down a whole lot of new changes that make it easier or more difficult to do your job. Except we're talking about your personal life and your
Yes,
living
at
situation.
home.
Right,
And I
exactly.
mean,
When
also,
people are
like, it's so funny because I don't know if where you live, if HOAs are common. They're super common in Arizona, though, even for neighborhoods. And
okay.
you do have a board of directors when you have an HOA. So you, as a homeowner, you can join the board of directors and you can try to be more involved and try to, vote and do that. But again, it's like, okay, so on top of my job and my personal life and taking care of my home, now I want to join and go to meetings on my free time to have say in my home. So I haven't done it, which I say, if I wanted more say, I could get more involved, but
Yeah.
that's also another job to add on to my life. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that there. We do have HOAs here a lot for because when I was originally looking, I was also looking at places downtown. Um, and the condominiums all do. But neighborhood wise, I didn't want a neighborhood that has an HOA. To me, that was like because I knew I wanted to do Airbnb or a long-term rental, I just wanted as little input from anyone else on that. There's still the city council, and the cities each have their own regulations and stuff. So I kind of looked into that. Denver's pretty strict when it comes to short-term rentals, that you cannot rent out for a short-term rental anything less than 30 days of residence that you don't have as your primary residence. So to me, I'm like, all right, if I'm looking in the city of Denver, it has to be like a duplex or like somewhere with a completely separate unit. Because if I'm going to do Airbnb, I don't really want random people coming through my house all the time. If I was a single guy, I honestly might be okay with that. But I live with my girlfriend, and she's like, I don't want that. And unfortunately, she overruled me on that one. But also, safety is something to keep in mind there. Um, so HOAs through neighborhoods, it's kind of a thing. Ironically, I was just talking with my neighbor last night about some of the changes because we had a big snowstorm last week. And typically in Denver, they don't like they bring snowplows through maybe once, no matter what. If it's 2 feet of snow, the snowplows will come through once because we have such high levels of sun that it usually melts the snow. But we had a weird snowstorm where it snowed, was freezing cold, like -10 degrees, and then it kind of got plowed, and then it froze, and then it snowed again. And so there's a thick layer, probably like half a foot, maybe like anywhere from like 3 to 6 inches worth of ice packed on my neighborhood street. That like I drive a Jeep, I can get through it, but if you're in a car, you're probably skidding by and it's not a comfortable drive. So we were complaining about that, and he's like, you should go. He's like, I've lived in this neighborhood for 30 years. They know my face. They're sick of my voice, but you're the new blood in the neighborhood. Like, if you guys are the ones that are louder about it, maybe they'll listen. So now I'm considering going to our city hall meetings or our I guess like the city of uh Englewood regulation meetings. Because you can get like 1 to 2 minutes to talk about anything you want. So I want to talk about a couple of things, but I'm like, I'm with you. I'm like, do I really want to go and do that now? And is that me being like a grown up? Like, who's gonna listen to me?
no, I totally like my HOA president lives close to me. She's like
Yeah.
down and she'll always talk to me about stuff and I'm like, yeah, I mean like you're probably right. Like I care a little bit about that, but like the meetings I work, like I can't come to that
Yeah.
meeting and do that. Like so I totally feel you on that. It's a hard line to figure out how involved you want to be to try to make the changes you want.
Yeah. I think I guess we see that a lot with like voting, right? Like as our
Mm-hmm.
age group becomes like the biggest voting group, that's a real thing. But when it comes to like again, like something like that, I'm like, I guess it does affect my neighborhood and it's something I want to complain about. But do I really want to go there and like stand and sit for 2 hours and complain and then listen to other people's problems. It's kind of like a selfish mindset, I guess, but like, I don't know. I do want to be a bit selfish over my time. And amongst a huge list of priorities, is that something that I really want to like dig my heels into the ground on?
Yeah.
That's where I'm at now. I'm trying to decide. But my neighbor has assured me that if I complain about that, he has numbers. He has numbers that will back me and that people will
There
agree.
you go. At least someone else has done the research part. That's helpful.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's like a whole another debate now that like when you buy a home, you're part of the community, right? So you're
Hmm.
the person that kind of gets a little bit more say than renters in rentals. Um, and that's I think some people really like that though. And some people like being able to customize their home versus just not. I think that debate versus rent versus buy is really interesting. You were renting beforehand. Have you made any major changes to your condo? And do you like the ability to be able to like customize certain things? What are your thoughts on like the rent versus buy argument?
Yeah, I think the rent versus buy argument is very valid, and I think it's funny when one, I guess maybe because I'm just like so open-minded, but like some people are so renters and some people are so for the buy side, and I'm in the middle. I'm like, it really is going to depend. Like you were saying earlier, like if you're moving to a new city, you might not, like that's what I did. I moved to Arizona. I didn't know anything, so I rented. I don't
Yeah,
know where I want to live or how long I want to stay, and so it just made sense. I think the buy side though, the thing that I think is nice is the fact that my rent will never, like my mortgage isn't going to go up. My mortgage is
yeah,
especially with the way the last few years have gone with rental prices increasing and where rent is at in the area I live. I'm like, it's a steal that my mortgage is at this price and is going to stay at this price. Like that's so nice to have that. And then I do like the being able to customize a little bit more. I've done some DIY projects that I have now learned I will never do again, and I will hire a contractor because it's far more work than I thought it was going to be. But it was fun to be able to do those things and kind of learn that for myself.
yeah.
And to like, I redid my bathroom countertop or cabinets and my kitchen cabinets.
Okay.
And the bathrooms went fine, 3, 4 cabinets, couple drawers, pretty quick and easy. They turned out pretty nice. And then I went to do the same thing to the kitchen. Kitchen has like 35 cabinets. That's way more. Like that was a way. It's they're still not all back on yet. It's still a work in progress.
Yeah,
But I'm glad I learned that in this smaller condo that I eventually want to be a rental rather than like my dream home.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm with you where I kind of I outsourced everything to begin with, and now I'm actually like, yo, I will spend every dollar I have if like I need someone to come over and screw something in every time, or like fix the electric, or I mean electric is a good thing to outsource actually.
Yeah.
But I mean just like exterior things around the house, hanging things up, I was not handy at all, and I loved renting for the fact that I could just call up the apartment complex and they would change everything up to like the fridge filter. I don't know how to change a fridge filter. I'm gonna have to figure that out soon because I think my light's on. But like that's something that's not even, you don't even have to be handy to figure that out. But YouTube has become my friend, and I'll like now I'm like I'll try once, and
Yeah.
then if I can't do it, it's easier probably just to like get it done, check it off the box, and get someone over. TaskRabbit is huge, because I've had people come from TaskRabbit and like just hang my TVs because I'm like, this is like an $800 TV. If I hang it and it's decent, but then falls in a year, I should have just spent the $50 to $100 for someone to come out and mount it.
Yeah. I think when I first bought, I was, obviously I just bought my house. I wasn't making as much money at the time, so I was pretty frugal. And then I started my finance journey, so then I got like really, on the savings side for a while. And I think within this last 6 months, I've really started to take on that mindset of like, okay, my time's pretty important though, so it
Yeah,
might make more sense for me to pay someone to do that, so that I don't have the stress, I don't have to worry about it or figure it out, and then I can just, you know, keep making money doing what I do.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's funny that you mentioned that you're kind of in the middle and ambivalent towards renting versus buying for each person because you work in real estate. And I feel like it's the people who work in real estate that typically are, oh, you're wasting your money renting. And when I hear things like that, I'm like, you must be coming from like a very hard point in the sand where you can't see the other side. because flexibility, there's a dollar sign towards being able to cancel your lease and just pay 2 months worth of rent and you're out, you're free, you're done. And that could be whether you are in a relationship, you break up and you need to move, whether you have a roommate that you hate, whether you need to leave across the country for a job. um, Having things included where people fix things for you. I just think that there are dollar sign, or there are like items that don't have an actual dollar sign, but like on the back end, when you look towards it, there's value in it when renting. And so I was always pro rental. Well, I was pro renting, but pro real estate investment too. Like for my personal life, I don't know if I would have bought a home if it wasn't for an investment. But if I was to rent, then you can rent as nice of a place or as chill of a place, as low key of a place as you want. And that can change every year if you want to, if you're
Hmm.
changing rapidly. So I don't know. I really like the flexibility there as someone who just couldn't make up my mind or couldn't stay put in one place for that long.
No, I completely agree. I think as a real estate agent, the only thing that I get a little bit like, I wouldn't say pushy, but like I think there's people that rent because they want to rent, and there's people that rent because they have to rent. And I
Yeah.
think the people that have to rent, I would I would advise them to do a little bit more research, because I always say people are you're probably closer to being able to buy something than you think you are. And if you're not, talking to a lender, talking to a real estate agent, you can figure out what those couple of steps are that would get you closer to being able to buy. So I feel like if you're a renter who's like, oh, I can't buy, I just have to be a renter, and you've just kind of put yourself in that box, I think those people, I would try to push them to be like, hey, maybe explore it. Because if you do like your area and you do want to stay and you are wanting to buy, but you've just
Yeah.
counted yourself out already, don't don't count yourself out too soon. You might be closer than you think you are. So I do get a little pushy about those people, but I definitely understand the like pros to renting. Like if my stove breaks, I'm gonna have to spend like $600, whereas I could just be like, hey, stove's broken, gonna
Yeah.
come fix that.
I like that a lot. I think that is a good place to be pushy on, because those people are making excuses for themselves without maybe doing the full amount of research. There's rent to buy opportunities, which maybe that's not the most common thing that you see. But if you go and you look and you get creative and you talk to the right people, or maybe you find a realtor, or maybe it's even a property management company that rents, maybe that's the way that you get into a home and you rent it for 2 years, you fall in love with it, and you have the option to buy it. So I think there are a lot of ways to get creative with real estate. It's one of my favorite things about real estate. And it just requires a little bit more research on the front end. But I think, yeah, people sometimes, like I mentioned, it was like analysis paralysis, right? Like people don't even want to do that research because it's easier to just be like, I can't buy a home here. I live in a high cost market. At this point, almost every market in the United States is high, right? Like other than maybe, I mean, Ohio always catches random strays for being like a cheap market, but people are moving there, and real estate is appreciating there. Maybe not as high as somewhere like Arizona, like Nevada, like California, like Colorado, these hot places to move to, but the armpits of the United States are still appreciating real estate wise over the past couple of years. And so these days it's like there's always a good way to, if you want to, there's always a way most likely that you can try to get into real estate or a house, or set yourself up for the ability to in like a year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned one of your tips for potential home buyers, just doing more research. Any other tips that you have, either from personal experience or from professional life, that you'd recommend to people who are, feel that they're sitting on the sideline and maybe waiting for the right time to get in the home, or just trying to decide if they should even look into it?
I think both in like a personal finance stance and a real estate stance, my biggest tip is to actually learn your numbers. Like think about your personal income and expenses like you're a business, and try to take some of the feelings out of it and just look at the numbers, see where they're at. And if that's just in a personal finance sense, great. If it's in a real estate sense, reach out to a lender and talk to them about your numbers,
Yeah.
because people ignore their numbers for so long until they ignore them until they're so overwhelming that then they can't look at them.
Yeah.
So the sooner you can just embrace what it is and come up with a plan, the better.
That is awesome. I agree. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons that I got into talking about personal finance. People hate talking about it because most people aren't where they want to be. I mean, you the other day posted like one of the questions on your story. It was like, are you happy with how much you make? Or it was something like that. Like, do you want more? And I'm pretty happy with where I'm at, but I hit nowhere close because I have huge goals. And I think nowhere close was one of the biggest things selected there because the people who are doing well want more. The people who aren't doing well want more. That's, I guess, kind of the catch 22 of money in real estate. But if you can face the money, I guess is the way to put it, like face your money, face your numbers, then you can actually maybe start making a plan to get where you want to be. Because it's one thing to say I want more, it's another to have a plan on how to get that more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think too, like you said, it's hard to talk about personal finance. And I don't know if you feel this way. I've been in the personal finance world for a little while now, and I'm still not perfect. You know what I mean? So like people
Yeah.
look at these finance influencers and they're like, oh, I could never get to that point, or they're so much smarter or know so much more. I still don't know everything. I learn something new every day. I've on my journey still made new money mistakes that I'm like, oh, didn't quite learn that lesson yet.
Yep.
Like growth isn't linear. It's going to go up and down, and that's okay. But getting started is better than just staying where you are.
I love that there because I do think that people think that maybe we're like talking to them from like a point of condescension almost, like, oh, if you're not doing this. But it's like, yeah, like you said, I make mistakes. And one of my favorite things about having the podcast about talking about personal finance is it forces me to stay up to date on like money news, financial news. And then also it forces me to up my game and learn more because people will ask me, oh, do you know about this? And I'm like, no, I don't. But I'm gonna look into it now because you put it on my radar. Whereas otherwise I might have been so head down on one or two topics. So it forces you to branch out a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love what you do with the podcast. You have so many people on talking about so many different things. So that's, I love listening to podcasts for the same reason you love making
Yeah.
them. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big podcast listener too, because right, like different perspectives on the same topic sometimes is helpful, or people who just do something. The episodes I listen to of like random podcasts that I think I would never enjoy, or topics that I'm not even really like into, maybe like spirituality or something, for example. I'll listen to something and I'll be like, wow. I was like, I've never thought about that. And so getting this, I think people need to force themselves out of their comfort zone in terms of what they feed their brain educational wise too. If money is your comfort zone, it probably means that there's some glaring gaps elsewhere. And I just mentioned one for me. I know I could be maybe more of like an empathetic or sympathetic person. So those are all things that I don't really want to listen to and talk about, but it's really easy for me to go and talk about money. So those are the things that I should probably expose myself to a little bit in some way or another.
Yeah, I love that. Getting out of your comfort zone is very important.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I would just challenge the listeners to do this year is like whether it's like, oh, I can't get into homeownership, whether it is figuring out what you're good at and not good at, whatever makes you uncomfortable. I think this is like a really good year, to try to figure that out because it's not going to be a great year financially in my mind. I think we're definitely in a recession right now, whether they change the topic or not. But now's a good time to grow a skill that maybe you've neglected, or just better yourself in ways to make yourself more well-rounded. And that type of diversity, that type of well-roundedness is what allows people to thrive in these types of down economic times when it's not just like boom or bust for the most part.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Tell me more about the virtual assistant thing that you're doing.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of something that came out of Money Moves that I didn't see coming.
Okay.
I started the account, like I said, just kind of as an outlet, and because I wanted social media to become a little bit more educational. I mean, I have a personal account, but I'm not ever on that anymore.
Yeah.
And I just stumbled into an opportunity of, a bigger finance creator was looking for some help with some stuff, and I threw myself out of my comfort zone and I reached out and I was like, hey, like I've been an assistant in the real world, so I think I could probably be one virtually.
Yeah.
So I started doing that with him 2021. It's been a little over a year now, I think. Yeah, a little over a year. Um, and I really liked it, and it was going really well, and I was learning so much. It was honestly, it was a great way to kind of have a mentor and a
Yeah.
job at the same time because I learned so much through working for him. But then when I started to kind of meet some other people, they were like, well, what are you doing with your finance account? Like, are you going to make a course? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? And none
Yeah.
of those were really like speaking to me. I was like, I just don't, that doesn't feel like it's in line with who I am and what my, you know, strong qualities are.
Yep.
And so then one of the girls was like, well, I can let people know you do some assisting if you want. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And then she has a course and she let one of her courses know that I did that. And I had a couple people reach out from that, which was like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, they say your network's your net worth. And that was
Yeah.
like a moment where it really all came full circle. So then I started working with another one and I kind of realized, oh, I could kind of expand this and grow this a little bit bigger. So then slowly over the next, this all kind of happened within the last 6 months, but every couple months I've been kind of reaching out and adding a few more clients. So we're up to about 4 right now and
Okay.
kind of going from there. My boyfriend quit his job last year because it just life and everything. So then this was like, hey, let's just kind of grow this together and see where we can take it. So
Nice.
we're kind of in the early stage of it, but it's something that I really love doing and that we're both pretty good at. So it's been fun to kind of see where it's going to take us.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I've heard about that in the past during the pandemic because everybody kind of worked remote at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and so people were looking for like side gigs, and that was an easy, or not an easy, but an easy one to get into, maybe a low
Yeah.
barrier to entry. So are you helping other people become virtual assistants, or are these clients people that you are doing the assistant tasks for?
Yeah. Right now, it's just me being an assistant to them.
Okay.
We help them with content creation, engagement, content plans, emails, schedules,
Mhm.
kind of those sort of things. I'm not sure if down the road it'll be something where I teach people how to do it. I think that would be cool because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, I mean, for me, when I got the first one, it made me realize like, oh, I could real estate, I have to be in Arizona and I have to make, be here to make the
Yeah.
money. Whereas the virtual assistant, it was like, oh, we could go on a trip for a long weekend. My family's in Oregon, my boyfriend has family in Houston. It's like, oh, we could go and be out there. And if we had enough money coming in from like a virtual business, it wouldn't really hinder us that we're not actually in the state. So then it became a lot about location freedom. And that's kind of what really drove us to kind of
Yeah.
expand it faster so that we could, we want to spend a few years kind of traveling and going wherever. And this would
Yeah.
really allow us the freedom to do that while still bringing in money.
Absolutely. Where's like a top travel destination for you guys right now?
So we're really trying to plan a Europe trip. Neither of us have ever done that. So that's kind of the big one on our mind. And then San Diego is such a high cost of living. If we could move out there, we would, but
Yeah.
it's too expensive. So like I want to be able to go out there every summer because it's too hot in the desert. I want to go to the beach.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was one of my big motivators. I mean, Arizona has so many snowbirds where they come and they live here during the winter and then they leave in the summer. And I was
Yeah.
like, I want that to be us. I don't want to be here in the summer. Like I want that life.
Yeah. What I like is that like people are starting to think like, what's my ideal life? And for many, it's like, yeah, the snowbirds have it right. I want to live in the mountains at one point. I want to be at a beach another point, or I really like this community, but I don't like XYZ about it. I mean, you've got hopefully the Airbnb there, or not even the Airbnb, because you could do 6 months. So you could do the
Yeah.
6 months in, 6 months out. Right?
Yep.
Oh,
Could work out.
yeah. San Diego is pretty sweet. It is funny because people say it's like the perfect place to live, and that's why it's one of the most expensive in the country there.
I know. It just has I grew up in Oregon, so I was always like 2 hours away from the beach. And now I'm
Yeah.
in a landlocked state where I'm like 6 hours from a beach.
Right.
I'm just such a beach girl at
Yeah.
heart. But the Oregon coast is like freezing. It rains a lot.
Yeah.
So you can't really be out there enjoying it as much as you can if you lived in like Southern California or I guess Florida.
Very, very different climates there, the desert versus the PNW.
Yes, yes.
So with the virtual assistant thing, have you ran into bandwidth issues at all? Like of having 4 clients and just then your main job too? Do you see that being I guess at that point you could just cap how many clients you have, but how have you been able to manage that workload? That's something I'd be curious about
Yeah.
listeners who might want to do a side hustle where they do that would maybe be like, I don't, where do I find the time?
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely have felt those growing pains with it in the last like 6 months or so, trying to like figure out, okay, now that I have more clients, I need to take less off, the real estate side of things. Where I would say when I first started, I was like 100% real estate, 25% a virtual assistant. It fit in pretty easily. It filled my free time. It worked out well. As I've added more clients, I've had to be like, okay, well, I added more clients. I've priced my packages to where, I'm making the money I need to make, but now I need to not work real estate as much. You know what I mean? So now I would say I'm at the point now with how many clients I have, it's a little more 50-50. It doesn't feel like one is more the full-time job and one's more the side gig. It feels like they're kind of each equaling out one job, which is different. So, I mean, and I did, when I first started, I just wanted to learn. So I was priced really, really low
Yeah.
because I just wanted to learn and I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I think my first client, I actually like wanted him as a mentor so bad. I was like, I'll work for free. Like, I just want to learn. But then as it started to grow and take up more of my time, it was like, okay, well, I need to be compensated for this time because I'm going to
Yeah.
take away from my real job. So it's definitely still finding a balance. We're still in kind of those growing pains of that. And then also I was like, well, I think I need some help. So then I was like, do you want to, if you don't want to help me, I'm going to reach out and find someone else that wants to do something like this.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of that balancing act of building a business. If we keep growing it further, I would probably reach out and bring on more assistants to help me. And then it's like, well, how will that look? Will I be
Yeah.
more hands-on, less hands-on? I think that's what 2023 is about. I'm calling it the year of the business. So I'm trying to figure everything out, including like taxes and healthcare, which is scary, but we'll get there.
Yeah. That is exciting because then you kind of do more of the management duties versus the assistant duties. And
Yeah.
I mean that's different for everybody, right? Some people don't like managing people, others just want to put their head down and work. So that's a good problem to have though. The potential of
Yeah.
growth. And I love that you're like, oh, 50-50 between like my main job and then between what was a side hustle. I think myself included, a lot of people that listen to this podcast, the goal is to kind of reach financial independence where you can leave the corporate world if you choose to. And
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about wanting to retire at 45, and my dad being one, but a lot of people are always like, what are you going to do then? I'm like, whatever I want, right? Like, it's not like I don't want to work. I just want to be able to do and control my time to exactly what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that would still be working in the corporate world, right? Like I don't mind my job. I don't hate it like some people do. So maybe I keep doing that and then outsource more of the side hustle stuff. But it's a good problem to have, and it's an exciting place to.
It's about having those options and not feeling like you're locked into a 9 to 5 until you're 65.
Yes.
It's being like, oh, I'm here because I love this and I feel passionate about the work I'm doing and it's what I want to be doing, not because I have to come here every day to pay the bills.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the also the things that has created this the boom in like content creators and influencers and such. So I guess just to kind of wrap up here, I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on like the world of influencers, content creators, all of that. Like we're kind of in it. I don't like to use the word influencer because to me an influencer is maybe someone that's like, this is how I get ready for the day, right? Like you're literally following them just to kind of see what they buy, shop, and do, and what smoothies they drink on the daily, versus maybe like content creators where it's like, I have a niche and I like to share information within that niche. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing. It's one thing that I'm trying to do more and more, like double down on this year. If it's
Yeah.
the year of the business for you, it's the year of content creation for me. But what are your thoughts from creating content for over a year or going on like 2 years now, and just your experience and what you see in the marketplace?
Yeah. I think that the next couple of years are going to be really, really interesting for content creators. I think you're right. Influencers and content creators are very different. You follow an influencer because you're being influenced by what they're doing, and it
Yeah.
influences what you buy and how you live your life and whatnot. I personally think an influencer's job sounds way harder than just like a content creator, because content creating, you have that niche, you know about it, you are educating about that niche, whether it's motherhood or personal finance or working out, there's so many different areas.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that it's going to be an interesting few years because you have so much going on with like AI and with like everything becoming so much more automated, whereas
Yeah.
it's going to be a transition from content creation, because I mean, you know, being in the world a little bit, it's about being there every day, showing up
Yeah.
consistently, making a mark, you know, not missing a day. And the more things can be automated, the less personal it's going to feel. So it's going to be trying to find a balance between utilizing these new technological tools that are coming out, but also still creating a personal brand, because most content creators are a brand.
Right. Yeah, no, I that's a really good point there. Like the more things are automated, the less people are going to feel the personal side of the personal influence. So that's interesting. I love that we were talking about like, oh, dealing with burnout and taking weeks off, because I mean we both kind of relate to just feeling guilty when we take time away from creating the account or creating content or just making new page information. But for that reason, that's why I don't necessarily envy like an influencer's like a day in my life. Like every
Mm-hmm.
single day recording yourself, it's actually, it seems easy, but it's also kind of exhausting. Yesterday, I was like, ooh, maybe I should record myself at the gym. And I was like, no one wants to see me recording myself at the gym. So like, I don't know. It's a mindset shift, and I'm really interested. I think more and more people are doing it, which is great, because I think the marketplace kind of weeds out what they like and don't like naturally. That's kind of hope. Algorithms are a little different from people, but people vibe towards people that they like and the content that they like, and it's kind of lowered the any type of hurdle towards being your own business. You
Yeah,
don't really
definitely.
want to create content and have people follow you, and then you can make money off of that, and then also share things that you like, whatever that is. You create a platform for yourself.
Yeah. I think that's something that makes it such a big boom, though, is that a lot of people think, oh, being an influencer, being a content creator, like that's so easy. They're just on
Yeah,
social media. Like that's so simple. Oh, I could do that. And it's like, my boyfriend's the first one to say it all the time. He's like, you spent so long putting so much effort in for nothing that
yeah,
like, and no one sees that. You know, now all my friends are like, oh, how'd you do that? How do I do that? And it's like,
yeah,
he's like, you've been doing this forever for no money. Like that's how you did it. You know, so, and
yeah.
you feel the same way. You have to put in a lot of work for not a lot of return to build something like that.
Yeah, yeah, going through those dry spells where like no one's even watching your videos. You're like, what's the
Yep.
point of this? Like
Yes.
you're almost talking yourself out of it. I had a friend that she went hard last year on like reels for like the summer because she was off school. And I was like, yo, you're killing it. Like you're getting good engagement. These transitions are really complicated. And then once school started again, she like stopped completely. And I was like, so were you just having, I mean, it can just be like a fun thing, but I was like, if you managed to keep up some of that pace, you like really had the talent for it.
Yeah.
But finding the time plus the talent, it's tough. It's a
And
grind.
it's a weird world. It's the whole thing's weird, and it changes all the time. But if you can get in it and stay consistent, there's a lot of opportunity in it.
Yeah, the one thing I will say that I hate is that negativity is so much louder online. And I try not to make like clickbait titles on any of the videos that I post. But what I'll find is that a lot of the comments are, oh, like it's very, you get people that are like, oh, I love this, right? Or, oh, this is really helpful. But a lot of the time people are like, this is stupid and that would never work. And I'm like, okay, like, I don't know what are your thoughts, right? All you,
Yeah,
if you can comment really easily like, oh, this is stupid, but like what what are you doing?
yeah.
What are your thoughts on the matter? Do you have a better idea? Share that. But people will hide behind either like no name accounts or anything like that. But like I just find it's funny because that's the stuff that then gets traction. It's through
Yeah,
like the negativity of people like hating something almost as much as people loving something.
it's true. I know, like you said, negativity does speak louder, which is not always great for your mental health. So finding balance is important.
Yeah. And in the space that we're in when it comes to money, again, people were like, who are you to tell me what to do about your money? I'm like, you don't have to follow the page. You could go find someone else to tell you what to do about your money. You could find a financial advisor, or you could do nothing. But I'm just trying to put out information that's helpful to me and hopefully helpful to you. Right. Like it's
Yes,
like at least I'm trying.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, this was a great conversation. I loved having you on, Stephanie. Any final thoughts, any final remarks or questions? Anything you want to leave out there for the listeners?
I think we really covered all of it. It was great to talk, and we really got to go over all the different things that I have going on, which is great. And I just,
Yeah.
like I said, this is obviously your year of content creation, my year of the business. So I just challenge people to decide what this year is for them and what
Oh
they
yeah.
really want to focus on.
Hell yeah, it's January, right? If you want to make a change, now's the time to start. Cool. One more time, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm at Miss Money Moves on Instagram. It's Miss_Money_Moves with an S at the end. Most everything's linked on there. All my free stuff is linked on there. You can find my TikTok and Twitter on there. I'm not as big on those though. So if you really want to get involved, Instagram's the place to be.
Awesome. When you got Miss Money Moves, is that from the Cardi B song?
It wasn't. I just
Okay.
am such a big alliteration person that
Okay.
it's funny because when I created the account, I was like, I don't even know if I'll do anything. And I just like named it and then like started posting. And then I was like, well, this is what I am now.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that is a Cardi B song though, right? Like where
I,
she's like rapping, she's like Miss
I,
Money Moves.
yeah, I think it is. I'm gonna have to look
Or
it up
no,
now and
she's
post
like
it.
I make money moves. That's what it is.
Yes, that's
So
what
every
it
time I see Miss Money Moves, I'm like Miss Money Moves, and I
is.
say
I
it.
love that.
Yeah. There you go. Now you can officially
Perfect. Now I have like a
Cardi B.
catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, thanks so
Awesome.
much for taking the time, and I look forward to what the year holds for us. Thanks so much.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.